Imagine you are calmly paddling down a dark river, feeling the heavy humidity of the forest. The murky water moves. You think it's an alligator, but what emerges from the depths is a head the size of your car's hood, and the body that comes behind, literally longer and heavier than a school bus. Most people think the Titanoboa was just a giant anaconda, an anaconda that took a lot of whey protein in the past. But the truth, the real difference between these two beasts is frightening. And it doesn't just have to do with size. It has to do with the absurd physics of how the Titanoboa crushed its prey, and the bizarre reason why a monster of that level no longer exists today. And look, what I'm going to reveal to you in a little while about the constriction force of this prehistoric animal will give you nightmares. Hey guys, how are you? For us to understand the absurdity of Titanoboa, we first need to look at the undisputed queen of our rivers today, the anaconda. Our famous green anaconda, Eunectes murinus for those more familiar with biology. If you've ever seen a documentary, or if you're lucky enough or unlucky enough to live close to where they live, you know that this animal is a nightmare incarnate for any animal that comes close to the water's edge. The anaconda is the heaviest snake in the world today. A well-fed adult female can easily exceed 6 meters in length and weigh more than 100 kilos. There's reports of 8 meters, even 9, although science is very strict with these measurements. But think of a 6-meter animal of pure lethal muscle. She has no poison. She doesn't need poison. Evolution gave her a hunting tool that is almost poetically brutal. She is an ambush predator. She stays there, camouflaged in that muddy water, with only her eyes and nostrils sticking out. Patient. It can stay there for days. And when a capybara, a deer, or even a smaller alligator comes to drink water, the boat is a blast. It's an explosion of kinetic energy. In a fraction of a second, the dozens of backward curved teeth, which look like fish hooks, dig into the prey's flesh. But the bite is just the anchor. What comes next is the real horror show. Her body works like a whip of pure muscle that wraps the victim in deadly rings. And here is a myth that we need to break right away. People think that the snake breaks the bones of its prey. It's not quite like that. The anaconda senses the animal's breathing. Each time the prey releases air from its lungs, the snake squeezes it a little tighter. She doesn't let the air back, but more than suffocation. Recent studies show that the pressure is so brutal that it cuts off blood flow. The prey's heart simply cannot pump blood against all that pressure, and cardiac arrest is almost immediate. It's a lethal, perfect, silent hug. And then the jaws that disconnect, the digestion that takes weeks. The anaconda is the culmination of evolution for its environment. It dominates the top of the South American food chain today. But what if I told you that this 6-meter monster, capable of swallowing a calf whole, would look like a simple scared worm if it were placed side by side with the queen of the past? For you to understand the true horror, we need to take a trip. And it is not a journey in space, but in time. Let's go back exactly 60 million years. The setting is current Colombia, more specifically, the Cerrejón region. Today, Cerrejón is one of the largest open-pit coal mines in the world. Gigantic steel machines tear the earth day and night in scorching heat, raising black dust into the sky. But coal doesn't appear out of nowhere. Coal is what's left over from immense forests and gigantic swamps that have been buried and compressed over millions of years. It was there in this desert of dust and machines, excavating what was once Earth's first rainforest, that scientists found something that made the paleontological community hold its breath. They started finding vertebrae, bones from the backbone of a snake. But there was a problem. The size didn't make sense. To give you an idea, paleontologists know how to estimate the size of a snake by the size of its vertebrae. It's a mathematical proportion. When they took the vertebra found in Cerrejón and compared it to that of the largest modern anaconda, the entire laboratory must have gone silent. The fossil vertebra was not a little bigger. She was colossal. It was like comparing a marble to a pool ball. Doing the math, crossing the data, they came to a conclusion that changed everything we knew about reptiles. That animal, which they named Titanoboa cerrejonensis, was between 13 and 15 meters long. 15 meters. If you lay a Titanoboa on a basketball court, it goes from the bottle on one side to almost the three-point line on the other side. But remember that I said at the beginning of the video that the difference wasn't just the size, but the physics of the business. This is where it gets really scary. In a little while, I'll explain to you why the mathematics of this animal's body completely changes the game and why it couldn't hunt like an anaconda. But before getting into the physics of Titanoboa's death, we need to understand why. How does an animal reach this absurd size? You know what's crazier? The Earth hides secrets like this beneath the Earth we walk on every day. Secrets about how our own climate shapes life. If you, like me, are fascinated by these mysteries of our planet and want to continue unraveling Earth's bizarre past, subscribe to the channel here. Seriously, press that button. This guarantees that you won't miss our next expeditions in time, because the content we bring here is heavy, in the literal sense of the thing. So why has it grown so much? The answer is in the thermometer. Reptiles are ectothermic animals, what we popularly call cold blood. They don't have an internal heater like we mammals do. The size of a reptile is directly limited by the temperature of the environment around it. If it is too cold, a giant reptile would simply die of hypothermia, because the sun's heat would not be able to penetrate that immense mass to warm the internal organs. 60 million years ago, during the Paleocene period, Earth was recovering from the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, and the planet was a greenhouse, a true global sauna. There were no polar ice caps. The average temperature in the tropics, where Colombia is located, was a dizzying 32 to 35 degrees Celsius. So on average, today the average there is 28 degrees. This difference of almost 10 degrees in the global average transformed equatorial forests into cauldrons of humidity and heat, and nature abhors a vacuum. With the dinosaurs out of the way, the ecological niches of apex predators were empty. The weather allowed it, the space was there. Evolution looked at the snakes that survived extinction and said, "Grow up," and they grew. Now, let's talk about physics. And that's why the Titanoboa versus Anaconda comparison is almost unfair. There is a rule in biology and physics called the square cube law. Very simply, it says the following. When you multiply the size of an animal, its surface area increases squared, but its volume and weight increase cubed. What does this mean in practice? It means that the Titanoboa was not just 2 or 3 times longer than an anaconda. Because it was longer and much wider, its weight exploded on the scale. While a huge anaconda weighs 200 kilos, the Titanoboa weighed between 1.25 tons to 1.5 tons, over 1,200 pounds of dense muscle. That's the weight of a modern sedan packaged in the shape of a 50-foot hose. Can you imagine the constricting force of that? When scientists tried to calculate the pressure that Titanoboa would exert when wrapping itself around prey, the numbers gave a blue screen. The force generated by her muscles would be approximately 400 pounds per square inch. The force was the equivalent of having the Brooklyn Bridge fall on your chest. It's a pressure so absurd, so overwhelming, that just thinking about it takes your breath away. The prey did not just die from asphyxiation or lack of blood flow, as in the case of the anaconda. With the Titanoboa, the bones shattered. The internal organs instantly collapsed. It was pure, catastrophic crush death. Speaking of crushing, dude, cheer up and hit the like button below. If you're enjoying discovering that Titanoboa wasn't just a stretched anaconda, but a bone-grinding machine perfectly adapted by physics, your like is what makes YouTube understand that this content has value. It's free for you, but for me, it changes the game completely. This monstrous difference in weight changed the way she existed. An anaconda can still get out of the water and crawl on land, even though it is slow and clumsy out of its element. The Titanoboa, he forgets. With more than 1 ton distributed in that body, if she stayed on solid ground for too long, her own weight would crush her internal organs against the ground. Gravity was the only enemy she couldn't defeat. Therefore, it was a 100% aquatic predator. She lived in the deep rivers and kilometric swamps of the Kerejon. The water supported her monumental weight, and that brings us to a frightening detail about this Paleocene queen's diet. An anaconda eats capybaras, birds, small alligators. The Titanoboa needed high-octane fuel to keep that 1-ton engine running. What did she eat? In the same swamp where they found Titanoboa, they found fossils of bizarre crocodilians, such as Acherontissuchus. They were crocodiles 5 to 6 meters long. For us today, a 6-meter crocodile is a monster worthy of a horror film. For Titanoboa, it was an afternoon snack. She hunted giant turtles the size of dinner tables and alligators the size of pickup trucks. The hunting tactics must also be different because of the colossal thickness of its body. The Titanoboa's widest part would easily reach its waist, quickly coiling itself into tight spirals like the Anaconda does, was physically impossible. It was very thick, less flexible. So how did she kill? Titanoboa's jaw was full of giant teeth, made not for chewing but for piercing deep and holding, and she didn't need to circle her prey many times. She probably did 1 or 2 partial turns and used her own monumental weight of a ton to anchor her prey underwater, drowning the crocodile while the absurd pressure of her body tore the animal apart from the inside. It was relentless brute force where hydrodynamics and weight replaced agility. Now, quick pause, look at me. Imagine the scene. You have a time machine. You can only choose to watch a live hunt from inside a completely safe, shatterproof glass cage. Would you rather see an 8-meter anaconda swallowing a capybara whole in a Pantanal river today, or a 14-meter Titanoboa tearing apart a prehistoric crocodile in the scorching swamps of the Paleocene? Comment below. I'm going to read the comments today, and I really want to know if you are more afraid of the real monster that is out there in our rivers, or of this giant ghost that the earth has hidden. Leave it in the comments. Anaconda or Titanoboa? When we study these extinct titans, it is impossible not to be fascinated by the mechanics of nature. But look, guys, I need to open up to you here. You know that bringing this level of research, delving into heavy scientific articles on paleontology, cross-referencing data on the Paleocene climate, trying to translate the square cube law in a didactic way, and transforming all of this into this video you're watching now, is an absurd amount of work. It's almost a digital archaeological dig. And what keeps our journey alive? What allows me to continue bringing these complete stories with this quality and in-depth research is your real support. If this video taught you something new today, if it really made you travel back in time, consider becoming a member of the channel or sending any contribution to Valeur Demain. It's not just a button, man. It's not just money. It's you saying, I believe in your work and I want more of it. Any amount you can send directly helps me pay the bills, invest in the channel, and focus 100% on creating the best YouTube content for you. If you can't help financially now, relax. We're together in the same way, with all our hearts. But if you can, know that it makes a colossal difference. Thank you very much to those who already support. Returning to our lost world. If the Titanoboa was the perfect predator, the absolute pinnacle of reptile evolution after the dinosaurs, a true untouchable deity in shallow waters, where did this monster end up? Why don't you have to worry about encountering a snake the size of a bus when you go fishing in the Amazon River today? The answer is not a larger predator. Nobody killed Titanoboa. She had no rivals, no natural predators. She was the isolated and lonely top of the food chain. What killed Titanoboa was the same thing that created it: the climate. The world has changed. The Paleocene thermal maximum did not last forever. Millions of years passed, the continents continued to move, ocean currents changed, and slowly, imperceptibly, the Earth began to cool. The global thermometer has dropped. Remember the golden rule of reptiles? Size is dictated by temperature. When temperatures in the tropics began to drop, Titanoboa's enormous mass went from being an evolutionary advantage to a curse. She was no longer able to absorb enough heat from the environment to keep the metabolism of that 1-ton body working properly. The engine has cooled down. Furthermore, with climate change, the entire ecosystem has felt the blow. The forests began to change, the rains changed, the megafauna that served as food for her. The giant turtles, the crocodiles the size of pickup trucks, began to shrink in size or become extinct. Suddenly, the Titanoboa was on a colder world, with much less food available, requiring more energy than the planet could provide. She literally died of cold and hunger, not out of weakness but because she was too big for a shrinking world. And that's where our anaconda comes in. Smaller snakes, the ancestors of the boas and anacondas we know today, didn't need as much heat. They didn't need to eat giant crocodiles to survive. A rodent here, a bird there, and they were satisfied. They were adaptable, and in the unforgiving law of nature, adaptability always trumps brute force. The anaconda survived and prospered because it knew how to be exactly the size the world allowed. The Titanoboa became a fossil because it refused to shrink. Today, when you see an anaconda gliding silently through the muddy waters of the Pantanal or the Amazon, you are looking at a survivor, a lethal, perfect, and terrifying assassin who learned the lesson that her giant cousin didn't have time to learn. The real difference between the anaconda and the Titanoboa is not just that one weighed 200 pounds and the other over 1,000. It's not just that one squeezes blood vessels while the other crushes bones with the force of the Brooklyn Bridge. The real and most frightening difference is that the Anaconda is a real nightmare that knew how to adapt to our world, while the Titanoboa is a brutal warning from the past. In nature, not even unbeatable kings last forever if they don't know how to dance to the planet's music. Thank you very much for traveling through time with me today. Stay alert in the deep waters, and we'll see you in the next video.